Hello, welcome to my car. She is a wonderfully average hatchback 2017 Subaru Impreza, and she's wonderful. So enjoy. Why am I in my car? Good question. Why am I here after years of not being on YouTube? A better question. Life happened to a lot of us, but some really difficult things had to be lived for me, and so I went off of YouTube and I did that for a while, but I'm back. I'm in my car because my home is currently being renovated / built from scratch. So I don't have a place to film my videos, and I've been living with my parents for about a year now, and all of my stuff is in storage, and I just have kind of like a bedroom to do stuff in, and I'm gonna close this a little. So I decided the best place to do what I want to do is in my car. So here we are. I absolutely love reading. Like, I am obsessed with it. It's all I do all day long. And when I was very, very sick, I could not read. I was in so much pain that like the concentration level was not there. And I couldn't even listen to audiobooks because it was grating and I couldn't focus and I couldn't follow the storylines or the plot. That's how sick I was. I have worked really hard to bring it back to a place where I can do art again. I can read again. I can kind of live a better life. And so because of that, I have fallen in love with reading and stories again. I feel like all of the people in my life are sick of hearing me talk about books. So I need to talk to somebody who clicked on this video and cares. So yeah. So I'm going to be going over all of the books that I read in the month of April, all right here next to me. Well, all of the physical ones anyway. I also have some audiobooks as well. I read 9 books in the month of April, which is about average for me. I usually read anywhere from about 7 on the low end to like 12 on the high end. So 8 is right there. 9 is right there in the middle, kind of. So 9 books, and yeah, let's get started. Okay, so first up, the first book that I read in April is this one. This is my library's copy, and this is Peril at End House by Agatha Christie. And it is, I think, number 8 in the Hercule Poirot series. I don't even know how many books are in that series, like close to 50 or more. But first off, I want to say, this edition, whatever edition this is, it has like Agatha Christie's profile and like gold foil. It's like a beautiful black leather cover. It has like marbled end pages. I need to get whatever edition this is. I need like every single book that she's written like this. I love it so much. I want to start off by reading the first few lines of these books to you, just to see if you're interested in them. So, no seaside town in the south of England is, I think, as attractive as St. Lou. It is well named the Queen of Watering Places, and reminds one forcibly of the Riviera. The Cornish coast is to my mind every bit as fascinating as that of the south of France. I remarked as such to my friend, Hercule Poirot. So, this book is about Hercule Poirot and his friend Hastings. They are vacationing, obviously, on the Cornish coast, and they meet a young woman named Nick. That's her nickname. They meet a young woman named Nick, and she lives in a house, End House, that is very close to the hotel where they're staying. And when they meet her, they learn that she has escaped a few harrowing, life-threatening things. And Hercule Poirot is very suspicious, and he is pretty sure that someone is trying to kill her. So he kind of takes it upon himself to figure out the mystery of who is trying to kill this young woman, Nick. It's pretty fun. There's a lot of twists at the end. So normally most detective or mysteries, there's like one big twist that is either well done or badly done. In this book, it is well done. And it's not just one twist, it's like 2.5, 3 twists. So that's a really fun time. You know, there's like a bunch of hijinks. There's like a will that goes missing. There's some funny characters in here. So I really enjoyed this one. I think I gave it about 3 stars. Pretty enjoyable, but not like anything that I'm gonna maybe reread. So that's this one, Peril at End House. Okay, next one is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Penner. And this is a beautiful, I picked this up at my local bookstore because the cover is gorgeous. It's got flowers, it has gold foiling in the title and the little bottle. It's a pretty one. Nella, February 3rd, 1791. She would come at daybreak, the woman whose letter I held in my hands, the woman whose name I did not yet know. I knew neither her age nor where she lived. I did not know her rank in society, nor the dark things of which she dreamed when night fell. She could have been a victim or a transgressor, a new wife or a vengeful widow, a nursemaid or a courtesan. But despite all that I did not know, I understood this. The woman knew exactly who she wanted dead. So The Lost Apothecary follows 2 different timelines, a timeline in 1791 and a timeline in present-day London. The timeline in 1791 follows an apothecary who secretly makes and sells poisons to women who want to kill the men in their lives due to injustice. And but she has one rule, that she will not sell poisons to a woman who wants to kill another woman. That's like a rule of hers. And she also has another rule that every single client she has, she must put down their name in her book, of her register book, because she wants to record who they are in history. So that sounds beautiful, right? The present day timeline kind of follows a modern day woman who is in London, and she is alone on her 10-year wedding anniversary because she found out that her husband is cheating on her. I heard that, I read that premise, and I was like, this book is for me. I love historical fiction. I love things that are like a little bit dark. You know, Poison sounds like fun to read. Not literally fun, but fun to read about. And I was excited for this book, but it really disappointed me, you guys. This book is, the characters, their actions and choices do not make sense. And so they seem really unrealistic. The plot is like really unclear. It wasn't until maybe 60 pages from the end that I had any idea where this book was going. And that was frustrating. This is also a very woman book. And I don't mean that in a good way. It's not feminist. It isn't bringing awareness to women and their problems. It isn't relatable as a woman. I didn't relate to the women in this book. There are so many characters in this book that want to have a baby. Like, kind of, it's like just a lot of characters. Like both of the main characters, some side characters. There's a lot of like baby mania in this book. And like, I don't mind if a character wants to have a baby or wants to have children. Like, that's a really good incentive to move a plot along. But it just seemed a little weird that there was so much revolving around this like desire to have kids. And there's a lot of worry about menstrual cycles and like getting your period and having your period, and it was weird to read. And I am a woman, and so I should be the prime audience that this appeals to, but it did not appeal to me. I think it was a beautiful story idea, but somebody needed to take it away from Sarah Penner. Dear soul, like, good job on thinking of a great story, but like, she needs to work on her writing. It was boring, and I don't know how this story could be boring. It was slow, and then the last 60 pages, when like the action picked up, the characters kept on making choices that made absolutely no sense, and it was just so frustrating. So I gave this one 2 stars, unfortunately. So this year in 2022, I made a goal at the beginning of the year to every month reread a classic that I enjoyed in my past, and I just felt like I needed to read some books that I really loved and comforted me in these crazy times. So that was something that I chose to do. And this month, or last month really, the month of April, I decided to reread one of my absolute favorite childhood classics, and that is The Secret Garden. I absolutely love this book. If you want to fall in love with spring and be reminded of how beautiful the world is when it wakes up, read this book. When Mary Lennox was sent to Misselthwaite Manor to live with her uncle, everybody said she was the most disagreeable looking child ever seen. And it was true, too. So, this is a story about Mary Lennox. She is 10 years old and she has spent her whole life living in India with her parents, but there is I think typhoid, a great typhoid epidemic, and she is orphaned, and she has to go live with her uncle in England, on the moors of England, and it is a big, lonely, ugly house, and she is a little, lonely, ugly girl. This is not my copy. This is my library's copy, because mine is packed away in boxes, and I absolutely love my copy. I think it was published in like the 1960s, and the illustrations are beautiful, but the illustrations in this one are also beautiful. She discovers that there is a garden that has been locked up and kept secret, and she is determined to find it because she wants to learn about the secret. And she makes all of these beautiful friends with the gardener, a little robin, her cousin who is an invalid in the house, a cottage boy named Dickon who loves animals and plants so much it seems like he can talk to them. It is all about the power of positive thinking, connection with people, and also the connection with the earth and nature as well. It has a beautiful, satisfying ending, and it is about the magic of little things that then become really big things. So obviously this is 5 stars from me. Please read it. Okay, so the next book that I read was actually an audiobook, and that was the that was the next book in the Hercule Poirot series by Agatha Christie, Lord Edgware Dies. And it was an audiobook, so I can't read you the first line, but I'm going to read you a quote from it. Do you know, my friend, that each one of us is a dark mystery, a maze of conflicting passions and desires and aptitudes? So that's a quote from Poirot himself to his friend Hastings. So here's the thing about Lord Edgware Dies, and also just cozy mysteries in general. I devour them. I gobble up cozy mysteries like a little gremlin. I love every second that I spend reading them. I usually finish them in 1 to 2 sittings. They're my delight. However, I read so many of them, and they kind of all follow a really similar structure that oftentimes I will read them, love them, set them aside, and in a month or 2, I completely forget what happens in them. I sat down to start this video and I was like, what was this book about again? And I can tell you, sadly, I don't remember a lot of it. I do know that I absolutely loved it when I was reading it, though. It's about Poirot and his friend Hastings. They go to kind of like a comedy show of somebody that's doing impersonations, and afterwards they're at dinner and they're approached by a very famous actress who was actually the stand-up comedian, kind of like made fun of her in the show. but she was there watching it, and she comes up to Poirot and she asks him, I need a favor from you. And he thinks, oh, okay, she wants me to solve a mystery. But no, she says, Mr. Poirot, you are such a smart man. I think you're so intelligent. Can you please convince my husband to let me divorce him because I want to marry somebody else? And Poirot's a little stumped, and he's like, that's an odd request, but I am intrigued, and I will do this for you because I want to know what's happening. And so he goes to her husband, Lord Edgware, and says, your wife wants a divorce, sir. And the man says, fine, whatever, I don't care. Why did she send you? And the next day, Lord Edgware is found, obviously, deceased. And the mystery goes on from there. It involves quite a few people, the way Agatha Christie often does. I don't remember much. I remember the actress is like the main suspect, but there's also some other suspects, and I don't remember what happens much after that, but it is a really fun book. Not as memorable as Peril at End House, but I really like this one. And of course, I love me some Poirot. He is my fave. So I think I gave it 3.5 stars. A Place for Us by, Fatima Farheen Mirza. As Amar watched the hall fill with guests arriving for his sister's wedding, he promised himself he would stay. It was his duty tonight to greet them. A simple task, one he told himself he could do well, and he took pride in stepping forward to shake the hands of the men or hold his hand over his heart to pay the women respect. He hadn't expected his smile to mirror those who seemed happy to see him, nor had he anticipated the startling comfort in the familiarity of their faces. So I picked this book up because April was the month of Ramadan, and although I am not a practicing Muslim and have never been one, I thought it would be really eye-opening to read a book about Muslim characters written by a Muslim author. I don't think I've ever intentionally done that, and so I thought that was a good idea. This book is a family drama. It follows the family of which Amar, our youngest son, is a part of, and it is the story of how it follows decades of the family and all of the characters, but it follows his story of how he becomes distanced and eventually estranged from his parents and in the end also his siblings. So you get to follow the story of this family through the eyes of pretty much every family member in the book, from the mother to the oldest sister, the father, Amar himself, and that is really interesting. However, I did have a problem because it doesn't ever give any sort of context clues. It doesn't have a style change or even like a clumping of chapters in the points of view. It kind of just, a paragraph will start and you have to kind of figure out who's talking. And because a lot of the scenes in the book are repeated but through the eyes of other people, it can be a little confusing because you're like, I read this already, who's talking now? And there's 5 people in this family, and because they don't really have individual voices, sometimes it takes you a while to figure out who is saying what. It is also very slow going. It is mostly character-driven book. It's not driven really by plot. There is a plot, but it's very slow moving and it's very subtle. So while I was reading this, it hit me kind of like in that deep place that makes you think. But when I was not reading it, after I set it aside, I forgot about it because it was slow. And so I never felt the impulse to pick it up and keep going. Except for when I, put aside time to read and I would pick it up and I'd think, oh yes, I do love this book. It is a little sad. It's about a son who's estranged from his family. It touches on a lot of topics of what it means to be a good son or a good father or a good mother, etc. Cultural and societal expectations on people It talks a lot about faith, obviously, and how people can change their ideas and their views of God and sin and heaven. Touches a lot on how do you raise your children to be culturally aware and appreciative of a faith that you believe in so deeply, while still letting them be themselves and have their own stories and their own experiences. And it's really beautiful. I learned a lot about, the culture of being a Muslim and what that means to people. So it hit me in a good place. I cried at the end, and I love me a book that can make me cry. So yeah, this was actually, I really enjoyed this, and I would recommend it to everybody. I gave it 4 stars. Okay, so the next book that I read in the month of April was Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. Let's go. By the time Alex managed to get the blood out of her good wool coat, it was too warm to wear it. Spring had come on grudgingly. Pale blue mornings failed to deepen, turning instead to moist, sullen afternoons, and stubborn frost lined the road in high, dirty meringues. So, I was looking forward to this book. The premise sounded really promising. I had enjoyed Leigh Bardugo's Shadow and Bone series, and I really wanted to see what she could do with the genre of dark academia, with the genre of adult fiction. So I was hopeful for this novel. Okay, sorry, my camera overheated because it was over here sitting in the sun, and it's like it burns you when you touch it. So I'm filming on my phone. I hope that's okay and the quality doesn't just like drastically drop. But yeah, so I was talking about Ninth House. Here's the thing. This book started off really great. I was excited and it was really intriguing to me, and then it went downhill really fast, and that just really disappointed me. I thought the writing got really sloppy. The plot got kind of repetitive and frustrating. And the end had the dreaded like evil villain monologue of like, this is how I did it all. And I feel like that is just so lazy for Leigh Bardugo to do, and that's just disappointing. So yeah, this story, if you don't know what it's about, it is about a girl named Alex Stern who can see ghosts, and she has been trying to avoid them her whole life. One day she wakes up in a hospital bed after a very traumatic multiple homicide that she has escaped. Everyone around her was found dead, but she was not dead. And strange man is sitting by her bed, and he offers to give her a full ride, a full paid scholarship to Yale University. But what she has to do is take on the job of regulating and monitoring the 8 houses of the Veil, which at the university, which are kind of like these 8 secret societies who practice dangerous magical rituals in order to manipulate and have influence on the world around them, around politics, the lives of celebrities, the stock market, government things, all sorts of things. So it is her job to kind of keep them in line and make sure they don't do anything dangerous and follow all the rules. Here's the thing. There were some scenes in here that obviously require a trigger warning. And I didn't know that going in, but that's okay. And those scenes were just not written with the sensitivity that they needed to be written with. I felt like they were kind of put in for shock factor, and that's not cool. Trauma can be a pretty difficult thing to write, and I realize that. So there's that, but I just feel like yeah, it felt a little hokey, which is a strange thing to feel about like a scene that's supposed to be traumatic and like a trigger warning, but that's just the way it turned out, and that made me really uncomfortable. The ghosts themselves were like too chain rattling to be really intimidating or scary. I didn't find them compelling at all. She tried to touch on so many themes that I just feel like she didn't do well at all. I feel like this book had, I mean, it's a pretty big book. I mean, it's not huge, but it's hefty. And I feel like there was just so much in here, but also there wasn't enough in here to make it good, if that makes sense. So this was really disappointing. I gave it 2.5 stars. Thinking about it, I might even rate it lower than that. No, 2.5 stars is about accurate. It did leave a little bit of a cliffhanger. Maybe not a cliffhanger, but just like a lead to the sequel. And like, I kind of want to read the sequel because I do know that sometimes books, like series, will get better as they go along. But sometimes series will get worse as they go along. And I'm nervous about that. So, I don't know. Maybe I will read the second book. Maybe I'll attempt it, but I will give myself permission to not finish it, if that makes sense. Although, knowing me, I'll probably finish it because I rarely DNF books. But anyway, this one was disappointing, 2.5 stars. The next book that I read was the first book in the Wingfeather series, which is a middle grade fantasy novel series. And this is, has condensation on it from my iced tea. The old stories tell that when the first person woke up on the first morning in the world where this tale takes place, he yawned, stretched, and said to the first thing he saw, "Well, here we are." The man's name was Dwayne, and the first thing he saw was a rock. Next to the rock, though, was a woman named Gladys, who he would learn to get along with very well. In the many ages that followed, the first sentence was taught to children, and their children's children, and their children's parents' cousins, and so on, until, quite by accident, all speaking creatures referred to this world around them as, "Here we are." This is a story about 3 children, the Igby children, who live in a comfy little cottage, and they are well loved by their sweet mother and their ex-pirate grandfather, and they live in the land of Scree on an island that is in the middle of the Dark Sea of Darkness, which is the name of this book, On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness. And their land is ruled by the evil Fangs, which are kind of like lizard monster men. And they kind of get in trouble with these Fangs, and they also start learning about these secret and legendary jewels of Aniara, which are from the Shining Isle, and like maybe their mom and grandfather know about them, but the Fangs definitely know about them, and they have to navigate this adventurous world to kind of figure out their true destiny. And it is a very funny book. It is very witty and lighthearted and very cute, at least in the beginning. I was really enjoying it. It was kind of slow, but it was like really entertaining enough for me to keep going. And I could really imagine like reading this aloud to kids and them thinking it was like hilarious. But then a little bit past halfway, we go from super lighthearted, like our villains are kind of portrayed as like these goofy lizards that aren't super dangerous. And then we hit the middle point of the book, or a little bit past, and suddenly we're slaying these evil monsters in hordes, and villages get burned down, and characters start dying, and it's really fraught with danger, and it's intense. And I do not have any problems with that kind of content in a middle grade or a children's book. It's been done well before, and I think that children can be introduced to these concepts of good and evil and death and danger, and it not be inappropriate. And I don't think it's inappropriate in this book at all. I thought it was pretty well done. But I think there is, so this is written by Andrew Peterson, and this is his first novel, his first book. And I think that you can kind of see that it is his first because the beginning and the end are written with two different tones, but he tries to keep the same style throughout the whole book. I personally enjoyed the second half of the book more than the first, just because the adventure picks up, there is that tonal switch, and it's a little bit more enjoyable for me to read. And I'm hoping, so there's 4 books in this series, I'm hoping that the rest of them kind of follow that same tone of the second half of this book, so that it's, 1, so that it's consistent, and 2, just so I enjoyed them a little bit more. I gave this 3 stars, 3.5 stars. I can imagine like little past Candace, little self that lived in the past as a child, just like being obsessed with these books and like reading them over and over again and playing imaginary stories in my head of if I was an Igby and what I would do in these situations. You know, it really brought back that nostalgia, and it's important to read books, and it's important to remember to kind of commune with that inner child and remember those loves and obsessions and the things that moved you when you were a child. And this book is definitely one of those things that reminded me of that. So that was a really great thing, and I loved reading this month. So okay, so I put you back on the camera. We're back on the camera because I need my phone to read the next excerpt from this book, which was Money in the Bank by P.G. Wodehouse. And oh my word, I love P.G., good old P.G. Wodehouse. Mr. Shoesmith, the well-known solicitor and head of the firm of Shoesmith, and so on, of Lincoln & Fields, leaned back in his chair and said that he hoped he had made everything clear. He accompanied this remark with one of those short, quick, rupee coughs by means of which solicitors announce that a meeting is concluded. A Jeff Miller came out of his meditations with a start. Mr. Shoesmith always reminded him of a bird, and in the attempt of thinking what kind of bird, he had allowed his attention to wander. I mean, they're delightful characters, all of these characters. You have a failed lawyer, you have a lord who is acting as a butler, a crazy uncle, you have the beautiful love interest, the cool and collected as a cucumber kind of young woman. You have a big game hunter lady who is trying to run kind of like a vegetarian commune. Everything in this book is circling around people trying to find a bunch of missing diamonds that are hidden in this house, and it's great. It's obviously a very formulaic book, so you know that like the guy, in the end, the guy gets the girl. In the end, they find the diamonds, so on, yada, yada, yada. But it is still really fun. So yeah, I gave it 3.5 stars. Oh, Lord, it's hot. Oh, it's so cold. I can't believe it's May. When is it going to become warm and summery? And I was like a complete baby about it. And now I'm sitting in my car just like absolutely sweltering. I feel really bad that I complained now. So I read Tess of the D'Urbervilles by Thomas Hardy. And I can just tell you, like, when I read this book, my heart dropped out of my body, and it fell into this book, and it stayed there, and it is still there, and I have not yet got it back. And I don't know if I will ever get it back. And I am okay with that. Okay, so I'm going to read you not the first line of the novel because I didn't feel like it was indicative of the book itself, but I'm going to read you some of my favorite quotes from Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Her affection for him was now the breath and life of Tess's being. It enveloped her as a photosphere, irradiated her into forgetfulness of her past sorrows, keeping back the gloomy specter that would persist in their attempts to touch her. Doubt, fear, moodiness, care, shame. She knew that they were waiting like wolves just outside the circumscribing light, but she had long spells of power to keep them in hungry subjection there. It's just like a beautiful description of when you fall in love with someone it's like, it's so, you know that it's transient and it could leave you, but at the same time, you're just ignoring that and staying in that happy, warm place. I'm having a hard time even just reading these well enough to feel like I'm doing them justice. Why it was that upon this beautiful feminine tissue, sensitive as gossamer and practically blank as snow as yet, there should have been traced such a coarse pattern as it was, doomed to receive. Why so often the coarse appropriates the finer thus? The wrong man the woman, the wrong woman the man. Many years of analytical philosophy have failed to explain to our sense of order. Okay, friends, I'm going to have to find a solution for my hot car this summer because my camera keeps overheating. But I was talking about Tess of the D'Urbervilles, and when I started this novel, I knew so little about it. I knew that it was one about a young woman whose name was Tess, and she had some sort of connection to the D'Urbervilles, who are a family. I knew it was set in Victorian England. I knew that it was written by Thomas Hardy, and that Thomas Hardy is known kind of for his Victorian realism, maybe even pessimism, and that he writes very, very sad stories. And I was all about that because I love sad things. I don't know what that says about me, but I will listen to sad songs over and over again. I will watch sad movies. I actually don't even really like happy movies that much. I will definitely read a sad book. And so this was my jam. This was the very first Thomas Hardy novel that I've ever read, and I can't believe that because I now consider him an absolute genius and want to read every single thing this man has ever written. Tess. It starts off when she's pretty young. She's about 16, and she is the oldest child in a family that has many, many children. I don't even know how many children. Her father's kind of a drunk. Her mother is pretty ignorant. They're poor. And so what they decide to do is they want to send Tess to who they think is a relation of theirs, the D'Urberville family. It turns out that that family is not a relation of theirs. They just kind of like stole the name because it sounded fancy. But Tess goes to the D'Urbervilles and she starts caring for Mrs. D'Urberville's pigeons and birds, and she kind of becomes like a bird keeper. And that woman's son, Alec, or Alexander D'Urberville, becomes absolutely obsessed with Tess, and he thinks that she is beautiful and really sexy, and he just like cannot resist himself. And some things happen to Tess because of that. She works through that, and she eventually meets and falls in love with this gentleman from a respectable family whose name is Angel Clare. And here's the thing. You guys think that the romance writing in Pride and Prejudice is good, but the romance writing in this novel, like, it had my heart doing butterflies for like paragraphs at a time. I would like sacrifice myself on an altar in order to make these two people happy. That's how much I loved it. It talks about societal expectations and the disparity between what is acceptable for a man and what is acceptable for a woman, kind of that double standard. It talks about fate and how the choices that we make, whether they're good choices or bad choices, sometimes always just kind of end up in the same place. It talks deeply of suffering, about the resilience of a young woman through trauma. Also just like the toll that a society or that culture can take on somebody's mind after years and years. Oh my God, everything in my car is overheating. I'm overheating. My car, my phone, my camera. It's not fun. Okay, let me talk about the character development in this book. So when I started, I didn't necessarily like Tess. I didn't hate her by all means, but I didn't find her likable either. And I was a little worried because I didn't know if I'd be able to read a whole novel about this character that I didn't really connect with. And then by the end, I mean, Tess, she became my girl. Like, I would die for her. Each tragedy and each sadness and each love and passion and happiness that she experiences in like this 5-year span of the book, it builds her into this, it makes her grow into this mature and thoughtful young woman who doesn't just lay back and let things happen to her. Like, she is a go-getter. She's gonna try and change her life. She's gonna try and be a better person. And she has action in her life. And it's so sad because it's like whatever she does is just not quite enough, even though she's trying so hard. And oh, it's sad. She loves people. She loves her friends dearly. She loves her family. She would do anything for them. She loves Angel Clare. And then Angel Clare, I mean, at the beginning, I was in love with Angel Clare. Like, he was a total book crush. He's handsome. He's like this young man who has rejected the thought of becoming a parson or being in the church like his family wants him to, because he doesn't think that his religious views match with what a pastor or a parson should be. And so instead of going to school, he chooses to become a farmer, and he is intellectual and intelligent, yet he works hard with his hands. And like, gentleman farmer, like, swoon, I can get down with that, right? And he loves Claire. Like, he's so sweet with her, and he respects, you know, he keeps at a distance because he knows that she's kind of a little, you know, gun shy, and he listens to her, and they talk to each other, and it's just really sweet. And then as it goes on, you kind of realize that how he views Tess and her femininity and her brain is really kind of unhealthy and is not good, and it's hindered by society and how he has been raised, and he's really a flawed person, and he ends up doing wrong by Tess because of these things. The development of Alec d'Urberville is also really well done, from kind of just like this despicable scallywag to someone who has become a better person, but not really a good person, and not quick enough to do right by Tess either. And oh, the character development is beautiful. This book is, everything that it tackles, it treats so well. And I don't know what else I can say to try and convince you to read this masterpiece. Like I said, it has my heart and it hasn't let go yet. I read this book over a week ago, and I still find myself, as I'm driving places or laying in bed or just like doing the dishes or anything, even when I'm reading another book, like, I'll just be thinking about it and processing things still. And I love that about literature. That's one of my favorite things about reading. So if I could literally shove this book into your hands and like glue your eyes open and make you read it, I would. I know some people really hate this book, and I understand that because it is heavy. And it can, you know, you heard me read excerpts of it. It was written in the 1800s, so it's not necessarily an easy read, but it is worth the read. So 5 out of 5 stars. I put it on my favorite shelf. Okay, I'm done talking about Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Like I said, I could go on for hours. But that is the end of this video. I am really thankful if you made it this far. If you are an old subscriber and you clicked on this video because you thought it was going to be an art video, number one, and you kept listening and you're at the end here, number one, I'm really sorry that it wasn't an art video for you. I do promise to start filming those as soon as my home is done being built. You're a gem that you're still here, and I love you. And if you just clicked on this video because you are a booktube person, please be my friend. Please stick around because I'm going to be making more of these videos. Gonna turn off my car. I would love to become a full-blown booktuber. Like, that is my dream. I love talking about books. I love talking about literature. So please leave a comment or subscribe, and tell me what you're reading, or if you've read any of these books, and if you love them or hate them. I will appreciate anything that you have to say to me. So yes, I love you. You guys are all beautiful people, and I will see you next time. Bye. Guys, I just looked down and I saw that I forgot to put on my earrings before I started filming. Like, I brought these out to my car specifically to wear them because I think they're so cute. What the heck? Okay, bye.